Your party of intrepid adventurers has just left town, well supplied after a hearty breakfast at the tavern, and has begun their expedition towards the Iron Hills, where they've heard there's treasure and dangers. The morning is uneventful until they notice, sometime before noon, a large cloud. Unlike other clouds in the sky, there seems to be something perched on top of it. And it also seems to be moving against the wind. They don't know it yet, but they're just about to encounter the Broodmother Skyfortress. Hey, this is Todd. Let's talk about Broodmother Skyfortress. Broodmother Skyfortress by Jeff Rentz. Apologies if I pronounce that wrong. It's always difficult when you only encounter names in print. Is a supplement for Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Really, you can use it for any OSR system and probably with a little work for any particular system that you're using. It's not quite a campaign, though it could become, if not a grand arc, at least a smaller arc. But what it is something that you could drop into any campaign, any world that you've created to really shake things up. Because that's what the purpose of this supplement is to basically ask the question as the GM, what happens if you took some places on your world and just had some giants come in and mess them up? There's a lot to like about this supplement, and there's a lot of it that I do like. I'm just going to go over some of the highlights here. Probably the biggest highlight for me is that I mentioned moments ago, this is something to drop into your campaign world. But unlike a lot of other adventures that might promise that, Broodmother Skyfortress really delivers. This is really what it's all about, literally, is dropping this Skyfortress onto your campaign world, having it run loose, and seeing how the players and your world responds to it. And what I like about this, besides just the concept, which I think is great, is that it forces us as GMs to really shake up what might be a stale campaign world. So often when we're world building, we've set everything in motion that we want to set. We've placed everything on the board. And then that board becomes static. The only moves that are made are ones that we've decided ahead of time. There's no surprises for us. And potentially that can become no surprises for the players either, because we all have tendencies. We all have things that we like to do, and players start to read that. They can sort of suss out what's going to happen. Sometimes you really need to inject some of that randomness, and that randomness can come from a lot of places. But what Broodmother Skyfortress does is it gives you a tool, and that tool gives you permission to shake things up. What if the players needed to get to a duke to deliver some papers, and that duke's manor was destroyed by the Skyfortress, and the duke is now missing? How do the players respond to that? How do you as the GM respond to that? How do you take this random event and work it into the fabric of your existing game? How do the denizens of your world respond to this menace that suddenly appeared in their borders wreaking havoc? It's a good way to combat a sort of preciousness that can happen from world building. And I talked about this in an earlier video about world building itself, but that things become meaningful to us, they become precious, and this supplement gives you a means of tearing that down a bit. And granted, it's something we could do at any time, but sometimes we need that tool to get over our own hesitation at damaging something that's become valuable to us. We like it so much that it's hard for us to let it go. And Broodmother Skyfortress allows us to let it go. Another thing I like about it is that the way it's laid out, it takes the origins of the Skyfortress and poses it as questions for the GM to answer. And it offers solutions, but that layout really encourages the GM to take this and make it their own. Now, obviously, if you're an experienced GM, you already know that you can do that. You already know that anything you buy, any game book, is really fodder for what you want to do with it. But for a lot of newer or less experienced GMs, that can really be a hurdle that they have to cross. Taking that from what a book and just taking it as it's written to then understanding that you have the freedom to take that written word and do whatever you want with it, whatever makes sense for you or makes a better game for your table. And Broodmother sort of bridges that by posing some of the questions about the origins and how things work about the Skyfortress as questions. It really pushes that idea of, hey, this is yours. Take this as a toolkit and make it yours. don't feel like that there's a particular formula you have to follow. In the same vein, it doesn't give you a way to actually get your players up to the Skyfortress. It's going to be left up to their ingenuity, which I think is great. It's certainly not an impossible thing to get to, but they're going to have to, if they want to get there, figure it out. And you as the GM, you can supply tools if you want to, but there's no set solution to that. It's really posed as an open question. How do we get there? I don't know. Figure it out. You guys as a table decide how you can get up to the Skyfortress. And I like that because it's something that encourages the kind of play that I like, which is pushing players to be creative, to come up with clever solutions to problems. The Skyfortress supplies two problems, or really one large problem, which is stopping it. And as part of that, the first problem is going to be perhaps tracking it. And the second problem is going to be getting onto it. And so by leaving them open, by posing them as questions without answers, it's encouraging the kind of play that I enjoy, which is that clever play. It's focused on the ingenuity, pulling that ingenuity out. And as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. If the players want to stop the Skyfortress, they have to figure out how to get there. The last thing I want to touch on is the layout and the art, both of which are fantastic. There's very much a comic book feel to the illustrations, including the font choice, and it really gives it that sort of over-the-top feel, which a supplement like Broodmother is trying to evoke, because it really is this little bundle of crazy that you're unleashing on your unexpected campaign world. It's got lots of tables to use, and as I said, it lays out a lot of things in questions or in ways that really puts it into your hands as to how you want to run it, what it is about, where it came from, what created it. All these things are really left to you, but put in such a way to give you ideas and directions if you don't have any. It doesn't just leave it up to you as a blank space, it gives you possibilities, and then you have the option of taking those possibilities that they give you or running with something else, which is a great way of both encouraging you to, as I mentioned earlier, make it your own, but not forcing it on you as something that if you can't come up with anything, you're left with a very unhelpful blank space. I said the last thing I wanted to touch on was the art and layout, but I was wrong. The last thing I want to touch on is that there is some great GM advice also in the appendices at the back of the book, and it's good to use even if you don't use the Skyfortress, to give you direction or ideas or inspiration after you've run the Skyfortress. It's just a really good resource that you get on top of everything else that comes with the book. If you enjoy videos like these, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It helps me out a lot. I also have a Patreon if you'd like to support the show in a different way. Thanks for watching.